I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of personal taste, but when a video game hands me control of a fighter jet stocked with missiles and bombs and piss and vinegar, my primary objective is to rain shrapnel and bodies from a blood-red sky. And this game does allow me to do that, provided I fill the gas tank.
Good, we have contact. Equalizing pressure. Commencing fuel transfer.
This is Tom Clancy's HAWX 2, and as it turns out, refueling a virtual fighter plane is every bit as boring as refueling a real-life commuter car. Seriously, what kind of noob, doucher general makes me fuel my own jet? I am a killing machine. I kick so much ass, I don't even have time to take names, let alone pump gas. So, with all due respect, General, let me know when you get your balls back. Tom Clancy's HAWX 2 is the sequel to the 2009 original, and for the return engagement, Ubisoft has made a few changes to the flight plan. Most notably, in an attempt to diversify the experience, HAWX 2 features all kind of breaks in the aerial dogfighting. You have to actually take off from a runway this time around, not to mention successfully land your plane and even fill her up. Now, it's nice that Ubisoft added some new elements to HAWX, but mostly, these features amount to little more than annoying blips on the radar. There are missions in which you just fly over buildings and record enemy communications, for example, and presumably, things like this were added to progress the story and lend some diversity to the gameplay, but there are two problems with that. First, the story is so thin and tacked on that it doesn't even matter. What little narrative impact these scenes have could just as easily have been handled by a cutscene. And secondly, these missions come across as dull and actually leave you wishing you were back in the cockpit. Adding diversity for the sake of diversity is never a good idea, especially in a flight game. So you can tell HAWX kind of struggles with its identity. It wants to be a fast-paced game of aerial combat with exaggerated, gravity-defying flight maneuvers and heavy weaponry, but it also wants the flying itself to share some of the spotlight as well. And that's where the game loses elevation. It's anything but a realistic flight simulator, so the flying just isn't interesting enough to keep your interest. Certainly not for things like landing and refueling. Also, I wouldn't necessarily call this a problem, but its controls are definitely an acquired taste. Now, if you can get used to them, they're definitely adequate, but they don't make a great first impression. They're not very easy to grasp, and you won't really feel in control of the action until you can figure them out. And for some, it won't be a problem, but I could definitely see others struggle with it. But for all its shortcomings, HAWX 2 does lock on to several targets. When you're engaging enemies 30,000 feet above the ground, the game really creates a sense of elevation and intensity. The aerial combat has that somewhat arcade-like feel the series is known for. Trailing foes and keeping them within range before firing a missile and peeling away just as it explodes is tremendously satisfying. It can even get pretty addictive as well. That's the intensity. The game creates elevation thanks to its spectacular use of actual satellite mapping. HAWX 2 may not be anything to marvel over from a technical standpoint, but in terms of its visceral aesthetics, the game is downright stunning. It offers some breathtaking panoramic views, and because your missions take place all over the planet, they're as varied as they are gorgeous. It's like kicking ass above Google Earth.
Correct hit on the target, 2-6.
Also an improvement over the original, HAWX 2 was clearly designed with a stronger focus on multiplayer, and cooperative play is definitely the game's finest quality. In fact, it's so good that it becomes a problem flying solo, because it becomes tougher than it should thanks to the game's co-op-centric design. You can blame the idiotic AI of your fellow pilots for that one. If you're looking for a realistic aerial combat simulator, you've flown into the wrong combat zone. This game largely ignores the details of reality to focus on the mission at hand. Exaggerated aerial maneuvering, shooting down enemies, and causing explosions. At least, most of the time. And that's when Tom Clancy's HAWX 2 feels less boring and more like a trip down the highway to the danger zone.
Check fire, check fire. You're hitting danger close.